25 years later, it's finally here. This is the brand new 2021 Ford Bronco. We have it in the Black Diamond. That's going to be your first off-road trim. This is the most anticipated car of the last decade, easily. Pre-orders are through the roof. We have one for you today. Let's get started. Welcome back to Adam Drives LA. If you're new to the channel, my name is Adam and I drive the coolest cars on LA's most iconic roads. Now today we have the 2021 Ford Bronco. This is the Black Diamond trim, which is going to be your first upgraded trim for the off-road capabilities. This is the one you're going to want if you are an off-roader, a camper, anything like that. Does not have a lot of the luxuries, but it has all the off-road capabilities that you are going to need, the core important features. Now if you are new to the channel, I invite you to scroll down, subscribe to the channel, hit me with a like. Let's get started. So the best place to start is going to be the exterior design. Now the first overall thing that we notice is this is one of the successful retro designs. You see this with a lot of muscle cars at one point. A lot of new cars are coming out with nostalgic looks. This is one that really pulls up. That front end really looks like the original Bronco, not the O.J. Simpson one. Let's forget about that one. That has nothing to do with this review. But that front end, let's talk about it. First, you have your LED. Everything up here is LED. The orange turn signals, they come up and they connect right to that Bronco font. This front grille, this will be your unpainted option, but you have like 10 options to go through. The luxurious packages, the other trim levels come with a body paint color matching one. You can do different designs with different hole patterns. Very cool that you have all this customizable options. Down here, you've got your recovery hooks. This will be on every single Bronco you get. One thing I want to mention as we wrap around, check out the built-in limb risers. Now you're going to attach a limb riser here, and it connects up here where you have a little thing that says accessory ready. This will be a very thick, very tight tension cable, and that is basically to knock branches and limbs out of the way as you're going through a jungle in your Bronco, so it does not damage your vertical windshield up here. As we wrap around the side, first thing, check out the steel wheels. How cool is that? A lot of people will think this means it's a base package. It means you couldn't have the wheels. It means it goes with caps. No, this is what you want. Trust me, this gets a lot of attention. It goes so well with that iconic silver metallic. That is the paint color we have today. Black Diamond trim. We're going to go over this a little bit more in detail, but this is going to be your first introduction to off-road as far as the packages go. We'll talk about the mirrors first. As you open the door, check it out. They do not move. The reason for that is so you can remove the doors, which we'll talk about later. And when you remove the doors, you still keep your mirrors. The Jeep Wrangler does not have that. We will talk a lot about the Jeep Wrangler going through this because that is going to be your main competitor. As you look at the side overall, you're going to notice you have your running boards, of course, a Bronco logo on your running boards. As we come around the side, of course, we do have the soft top, and I will show you really quickly how that comes off and goes back on, but it is generally a two-person job, so we're not going to do it right now. I do have some footage to play for you later. The rear tail lights, very nice. I love that they're using the Bronco logo all over this thing rather than just writing out Bronco. It's really branding this as more than just a Ford model, but a real Bronco, because now we have multiple. We have the Bronco Sport, which I've already reviewed, and I will link in the description of this video. Now, one more thing to talk about while we're in the exterior, talking about off-road capabilities, check out the departure angle. That's going to be your little tiny overhang in the back, and then check out the little overhang you have in the front. This is so small to create a really tight departure angle. That way you don't have rocks coming in and crashing into your front bumper. And of course, this is meant to take some abuse, everything in here. And while we're here, check out the attention to detail. Every bolt pretty much all over this car says Bronco on it. The little ones here that are flush, even these little screws, they say Bronco over them. I love the attention to detail. And while we're talking about attention to detail, I will go over one thing that I think Bronco needs to pull off to take away from the Jeep Wrangler audience is you have to have cool little Easter eggs all over. And let me tell you, this model does. Even the bolts, of course, I showed you, but check this out. Inside the gas cap down here, you have all the other generations of the Broncos. This is something super cool to see because the Jeep Wrangler also has a bunch of little hidden things that you wouldn't necessarily see right off the bat. This is, again, going to try and improve on the Wrangler. One other way that they do, the doors are frameless, which means that when you lift these doors up, you can actually store them in the trunk of the car. They fit. The Wrangler has always had that problem that when you want to take off the doors, it's a big deal, and you had to put them aside and pretty much dedicate the whole day or the whole weekend to having no doors and no roof. This one, everything fits inside, so you can take it with you everywhere you go. Now, as we step inside, the first thing you notice on the door, you have very minimal controls as far as the electronic items go. You only have your lock and unlock, and then you have a little bit of storage over here. The reason for that, they've moved the window controls to the center there because they know you're going to want to remove the door pretty often, and to do so, they want to have as few electrical connections as possible. So only what is mandatory to be on the door. Over here on the bottom, you have a little lift icon. That tells you exactly where to lift the door from. The doors are about 50 pounds a piece, and again, they do fit directly into the trunk. Now, as we step inside, you're gonna notice this is not a very luxurious interior, nor is it meant to be. You're not gonna see wood trim, aluminum panels. You're gonna see rubber all over. Check this out, all over the top, rubber for buttons up here, because they know you're gonna have wet fingers, dirty fingers, gloves, everything when you're camping, hiking, anything you're doing. So you wanna have items that won't be damaged, such as buttons and things like that that have electronic controls under them, so they cover them in this rubber coating. It's an awesome thing. Up here, this one does not have the option, but you will on the other trim levels have a little USB with a GoPro connection up here. Basically, they know what the buyer is going to do. You're gonna put GoPros, you're gonna go off-road, you're gonna enjoy that view, that big hood that really looks like the old Bronco. I'll tell you, driving this thing from the interior, the view I have in the driver's seat, it feels like I'm in a classic Bronco because of the hood, because of those little attachments for the limb riser. Speaking of the off-road capabilities, all the auxiliary switches here are pre-wired, ready for you to put on your LEDs and everything. While we're up here, notice how much headroom I have. This is probably due to this being the soft top, but I would assume the hard top is fairly close to up here. This is a ton of headroom, and for off-roading, it's very important not to be, going up and down and bumping your head onto things. Very dangerous. So these types of cars have that square boxy look because they have to be very tall, and this, while being very tall, maintains a very cool looking design, which is tough to do. So let's get back to the dash over here. Again, all of this rubberized material, your big grab handles here to get into the car. I love these features. These are the little things that really separate it from other cars that we've seen in the past. We'll get into the infotainment in a little bit. Down here, you have your hard buttons for the important things, for your radio controls, for your climate controls, all of that. Another really mean, tough looking grab handle over here for your passenger to hang on to while you're driving like a maniac. As you can see, we have the 7-speed manual, but if you look closely, you'll notice it's not a true 7-speed. That very first one is only a crawler gear. It says C for crawler. That's going to be only when you're in your very slow, probably below 5 miles per hour, maybe below 10 miles per hour, when you just need all the power there to get out of certain positions that the car is in. You're not going to use this for everyday driving, so you will start with first, and that goes all the way to 6th, so it's not a true 7-speed. Down here, you've got USB connection, you've got some storage. Here, you will usually have a wireless charger for your phone. This one does not have that feature. Again, this is the more off-road centered one. You have your cup holders. Check out the plaque over here. This is the Ford plaque, but if you look carefully and you replace the word Ford with Bronco, it looks like the front end of the car with the big headlights. I love that. I feel like they intentionally did that. I wish it said Bronco instead. As we move back, check out this surface that is mounted opposite. So what that means is when I look at it in my position here as a driver, it all makes sense. But if you were to turn around and look at this upright, this is your mirror control. Right is left and left is right, so it makes no sense. But they know that I'm gonna be the one using that, nobody else. And in my line of sight here, when I look down, it looks correct. I've not seen this on other models, but again, I love it that they really thought this through. They know how, like, user interface, how to get everything ready for the type of user that's going to be in this car. You've got some storage underneath here. It's a pretty deep pocket. These seats are marine grade vinyl seats. I can't tell you exactly what that means, but I'm gonna pretty much guarantee you can pretty much hose these down. These are, again, meant to be durable. I love the way the seats look. The color matches that exterior, that iconic metallic silver. I love the way it looks. Normally, I don't like silver cars, but on this, it's just such an iconic design, and the name of the color is iconic metallic silver. So I love the way that looks with the steel wheels. So let's start this thing up and see what these monitors tell us when we first do so. So clutch down, we're gonna hit the power button, get it into neutral, and check it out. Up front, I have my 8-inch screen with a little speedometer on the left side. It's cool. And then I have my digital speedometer and digital tachometer next to it on that screen. As we go through the buttons up here, there are not a ton of options to go through, but this is going to tell you the stuff you need to know, your tire pressure, things like that. You have some suspension control up here, which we will talk about in a little bit, but this is that 8-inch screen. It's very responsive, it's nice, but you don't have a ton to do here. So I keep it on the comm screen. I like it that way. Just maximizes and tells me only the information I truly need. Moving over to this 8-inch monitor here. Again, a touchscreen monitor. This is going to be your newest Ford system. Very responsive. Like I said, this one again does not have a ton of things to do, but it's extremely responsive. It has everything that you truly need, but because this is a little bit more of that minimal and off-road capable one, there isn't a ton to talk about here. But like I said, responsive, it's intuitive, it's easy to use, not really a complicated system, which I love. And speaking of that new Ford system, this of course has the Android Auto and the Apple CarPlay. Also, it has a 4G hotspot, which is awesome when you're camping and doing anything else that might require the car to do more than it's supposed to. Up here, the best thing we have is that sway bar disconnector. This button will disconnect your sway bars, which if you have been in these muddy, stuck situations where your whole suspension is just twisted and contorted, in a Wrangler, for example, you would have to go out and manually do this. This one has a button now. I love that. That is a feature that I have never used because I'm never in that situation, but the hardcore off-roaders will appreciate that more than anything. Speaking of hardcore off-roaders, down here you probably noticed this dial that I skipped over because there's a lot to talk about. This, as you push the buttons, this is going to be your four-wheel drive controls. So you go to, 4 low, 4 high, and all of that. You have your hill descent assist. But if you turn it, this is your GOAT dial. This goes into your GOAT modes. GOAT does not stand for greatest of all time. It stands for goes over all terrain. So you're going to go through it. It's going to show you have your normal, you're going to have your eco mode, your sport mode, you have slippery, you have mud and ruts, sand, and finally your rock crawl mode. Notice that on the floor in front of every seat, even in the rear, you have drain plugs. So this actually comes off when you can hose it down when it's dirty. This is really telling you who this car is meant for. You even have these in the rear seats, so I love that. Let's jump into the rear. Again, frameless door. These are also coming off. This thing becomes like a Mr. Potato Head. Everything comes off, the doors, the roof. And mind you, while we're talking about the roof coming off, this, unlike the Wrangler, does not have a big center bar in the middle. That center bar is pushed so far out, we can't even call it a center bar anymore. When the top is open, it is a total open air experience, unlike the Wrangler. As you step inside, you're going to notice you have these plastic cargo nets up here. This is for you to hang things off of, so you could hang wet clothes, your bathing suit, anything, and let it just drip down because you have that drain plug. In the center here, you've got your more window controls, and you've got some USBs, both the larger one and the USB-C. These are 60/40 split seats, so they fold down completely flat, very easy to do, and again, that marine grade vinyl seat. Let's talk about the cargo area. First of all, you've got your big 32-inch tire with the steel wheels. Of course, all around, this one has 32-inch tires all over. It looks amazing. This opens up like a door. Now, one thing that I might not like so much is this does not open with it. Of course, it's the soft top, but you kind of have a tough time going in and out, so you're gonna have to deal with that. But check this out. With the hydraulic pressure, you go past 90 degrees, this thing opens up all the way. So be careful with the car next to you, especially with that heavy tire attached to it. Down here, you're gonna notice very deep your storage. You have a ton of storage space. We have some drones and some equipment over here. Now underneath, you've got your spare tire kit, and then you have some more storage pockets. Speaking of storage pockets, a little bit more up here to keep things kind of safe. You have these little lasso icons over here for you to tie things down. These are going to allow you to not go anywhere. Anything you have back here will be in place because this is feels like it's connected to the chassis of the car. You have two more over there, and of course, when you fold the seats flat, you have your closed pickup truck. Basically, that's what it looks like. We're gonna close this up. Look at the rear end in general. This again is maybe the angle that's not as distinctive, but it still reminds you of the original Bronco, and you still have your recovery hooks in the back. Again, front and rear, they're gonna come on every single Bronco. Speaking of that removable top, let me tell you, we're not gonna do it now, but here's a video of the Ford people at the dealership helping us out to show us how this thing is done. Now again, it's not necessarily a two-person job, but it goes a lot faster when you have two people. You remove a couple of these vinyls back here, the windows basically, and then you roll it back. That's the easy part. Getting these windows out seemed to be the hardest part of it. The whole process probably took about 4 minutes. These are people who have done it multiple times, so once you get to it a few times, it's going to be a lot faster. But they did tell me the hard top is actually a little bit more difficult to remove. The soft top will be your easier option if you're going to want this thing down every weekend, constantly maybe removing the doors often. You're going to want the soft top.
We're just going to pull these guys down on both sides, and this comes up. And then it comes down, and it's going to lock again.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yep, and that's it.
All right, now that we've discussed the exterior design, the interior features, it's time to take this thing for a drive, see how it goes. I'm excited to try out that manual gearbox. All right, let's get going. Now, the first thing I have to mention, this Bronco was given to me by Ford of Santa Monica, who has given me a bunch of awesome cars, especially the Bronco Sport when that originally came out. So I do have to thank them for giving me this. Now, here's the crazy thing. If you are in the market for a Bronco, you've probably experienced a shortage and been told that it's going to be months and months, probably January of 2022 before you see your car. Guess what? Ford of Santa Monica currently has 9 other Broncos on their lot. You can go today and pick one up with no pre-order. You can do it today. It's amazing. I've talked to people who have pre-ordered in San Francisco, in San Diego, and they tell me it's gonna be months and months until they get their hands on one. You can pick one up today. Call Ford of Santa Monica, tell them Adam sent you. They're gonna hook you up with the best deal out there. So the engine in the one that we are in, the Black Diamond, it has the 2.3 liter EcoBoost inline 4 that makes 300 horsepower and about 310 pound-feet of torque. Of course, we have it in that 7-speed manual, which is truly a 6-speed manual. So the shifts are smooth. It's a very easy manual gearbox. Some gearboxes have a tight clutch and they're a little bit more difficult to drive. This, if you are wondering, is a very easy manual to get a hang of. I've been in it for the first 5 to 10 minutes. I already was doing perfect shifts all around, so not an issue there. The engine itself, let's show you here, but it is generally, I wouldn't say it's very fast. It doesn't feel very fast, but if you're not in it for the true power and you're not upgrading to the V6 that has more power, this is plenty. This is enough. This is not an underpowered engine, but you don't get the sensation of speed if that's what you're looking for, which I highly doubt anybody in a Bronco is looking for a sensation of speed. Now, as we're taking some of these turns, the handling is actually not as wobbly as you would expect. The steering, of course, is not as responsive immediately, but the car is actually really rigid. I was surprised by that. As I'm taking these turns coming from the spot where we're doing our detail shots, the car really takes the turns and the corners very solid. I mean, it's really planted and it feels that way. Not like a sports car. You don't even want this to feel like a sports car. This is an off-road car, 32-inch tires, but really it's doing much better than you would expect. Now, the seating position, of course, as I said, tons of headroom, tons of leg room. I feel very distant from my passengers, which is a good thing. This feels like a large SUV on the inside, but as many people came up, of course, you have a new Bronco, a lot of people are coming up while we were shooting, they all said that it actually looks smaller in person than they expected. They were worried this was going to be a massive car.
Everyone's been saying how big they are, but this actually seems way more manageable than I thought it would be.
It's not a massive car. Don't think of it that way. Of course, it's much bigger than the Bronco Sport, but the Bronco Sport is very much a sub-compact. This is actually, in it, you feel like you're in a full-size SUV, especially, again, looking ahead. This is my favorite thing. I feel like I'm in a old Bronco with the hood, those angles on either side. It just is such an amazing sensation of being in the past. That retro design was just done so successfully. So if I compare this to the Wrangler 4xe that I drove recently, and I will link that in the description of this video as well, because that is going to be the direct competition, but I drove the hybrid one. This is the 4xe, and that felt a little smoother because it had those heavy batteries really pulling the car down, and it just was really planted in that sense. Awful handling, it did not do well. This has those 32-inch tires, so you get a little bit more of that roughness, which I would assume is actually what more of the Bronco buyers are looking for. They're not looking for the smoothest ride, especially by choosing the Black Diamond trim. This is the off-road one, so you want it to be a little bit more rough, and the sound that's coming out of the engine, even that feels like the retro sound. You get a little bit of that old school sound. It doesn't feel like a modern EcoBoost engine, and it doesn't sound like one, and that's a good thing, I think. I was worried this was gonna feel like an economy car because it has that inline 4-cylinder, and we were, you know, maybe at one point expecting a V8 or the V6, but for a 4-cylinder, this is tremendous. It drives really well. I'm surprised by how well it's driving, how well it's handling. The acceleration is the only thing that I say, okay, it's not so powerful, but you do have the option to upgrade to the V6 if that's what you're looking for. So here are my final thoughts. I go back to when I went to school for car design. Now, the first thing we did when designing a new car is you identify your target demographic. This is an example of a car where Ford really targeted, really with laser focus, that one demographic, that exact demographic of who will be buying this car, the way they'll be driving it, the functions that they need, and the way that it should look to satisfy those people. So if you are one of those people, you should absolutely get the new Bronco. But if you have been in the middle of, you know, the Wrangler or the Bronco, I say this is the newer one, this is the more exciting one. This has a lot of cool new features. This is what was attempted to improve on the Wrangler. So I say give this one a shot. This is probably going to be your better option. I've driven both. If I had the option now, I'm going with the Bronco. And if you want to as well, again, call Ford of Santa Monica. I have to thank them for giving me such an awesome example of the Bronco. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.